This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, I don't know the best way to do it, but why don't we just have, I don't know if everybody has the same
Same order on the
order of
screen. That's
people.
proper.
Yeah. Oh, wait a minute. Brian's bringing up the participant list. So, Brian, just want to go through and ask who they are, say their name and get where they're from.
Sure, yeah. So if we go in order by the participant list that I have up here, Brad, I guess you're first. You're first at the
MRP,
table.
Brad Harris, MRPC.
Okay, looks like we have Dick Hillhart. He's from Athol.
Hello.
When they send you a list of like stuff they want done, and then they choose if you want to do this for fine.
And if you're not speaking, could you just mute your microphone so we don't have any background noise? Next, we have Todd Dwyer. I'm not sure if Todd wants to.
Yeah, I'm a select board member in the town of Lunenburg.
Great.
George Kahali.
Present. Present.
Okay, George Snow.
MRPC.
Guy Corbacero.
Winchendon Planning Board representative.
Okay, Janet Tice.
Shirley, planning board member.
Jessica Strunken.
Devon's executive vice president for mass development.
John Wyman.
Westminster Planning Board.
Kristen Lamoureux.
The Arc of Opportunity, Vice President of Day Supports.
Nicholas Bosinato.
Commissioner of Public Works, City of Fitchburg.
Paula Simons.
District 2, Mass DOT.
Richard, is that Richard Mackey?
That's correct. Selectman's representative from Sterling.
Sarah Bradbury.
Yep, from MassDOT District 3.
Sherry Bean.
RPC.
Stephen Tyler. Stephen, I believe. Okay. I believe Stephen's a consultant from TEC. I could be wrong on that.
Stephen Tyler, present from Howard Stein Hudson.
All right. Thanks, Stephen.
My mute. Thank you.
And finally, Tim Killhart.
Harvard DPW.
Okay, that's everybody.
Great, thank you very much. That was a nice technique for doing that. I appreciate that. Any opening public comments? General topics? No, we'll move right into approval of the January 13, 2021 minutes. Does anyone have any comments on those?
I've read the minutes of that meeting and they appear to be complete and accurate. I'd move their passage.
Thank you, Richard. Okay, any objections to that? I'm not hearing any. We'll approve the minutes from the January 13th meeting. Thanks, Richard. Next is the Montachusett FFY 2022 to 2026 tip. Review of the TEC score updates.
Yep, I can take that. So before we get into our updated tip, which would be 2022 to 26, I just wanted to give a quick update on the projects we have listed currently in our current tip in the year 2021. So just really briefly, the intent is to make sure everything's on schedule to be advertised by the end of this fiscal year, which is September 30th. So I'll go through real fast. The first one we have Lunenburg Bridge rehabilitation on Route 2A over Pearl Hill Brook. This project was advertised on December 5th, so all is good there. The second project, Gardner resurfacing and rumble strip installation on 140. This project, the state is still working on some right-of-way issues. We'll be working on it to keep this project on schedule for this year. Currently, it's at 75%, so it's currently in process. The next project in Gardner, reclamation-related work on Pearson Boulevard. As of December 16th, this is at 100% design, so it's on schedule. In Westminster, resurfacing-related work on 140 from 2A to Patricia Road. This was advertised January 2nd, so again, looking good. And finally, in Winchendon, improvements and related work on Central Street from Front Street to Maple Street. And as of November 16th, this was at 100% design. So again, it's on schedule and on pace to be advertised in this fiscal year. So that's it. That's the current TIP projects that we have currently in the 21 through 25 TIP. Right now, we're in the process of updating our new TIP, which would be years 2022 through 2026. We're in February now and progressing through our schedule. I believe we presented this handout the last few meetings. Basically, we're right on schedule. We've been updating costs and statuses of each project. Just yesterday, we actually met with Mass DOT in what we call TIP Day. We discussed project statuses and cost updates and project readiness, or when we can expect the project to be listed on the TIP. From here, we'll finish updating some project scoring in the next few weeks and come up with some scenarios, which we'll be presenting to the group next month. Let's see, this is what we got actually a few weeks ago was our target allocation numbers. So for the purpose of this discussion, we have what's called a target section of the Transportation Improvement Program. This is what the MPO is responsible for prioritizing. The TIP itself, it includes all federally funded projects. So there's basically three sections. There's this section that we prioritize. There's a transit section, which Mart puts together, and they'll be presenting that at an upcoming meeting. There's also a state prioritized listing of projects that are in our region as well. So again, we're mainly looking at the target projects for this discussion. And this is the allocation that we received a few weeks ago. On the left column of the screen, you see the current 21 through 25 TIP. The target allocations are listed in each year. For the new update in 2022-26 that we're undergoing right now, as you can see, fiscal year 2021, that'll be dropped off the list. Ideally, those projects will be out for construction soon, and we'll be adding fiscal year 2026. As you can see, in fiscal years 22, 23, 24, and 25, the numbers we've received are the same as in the current TIP, so no changes there. We'll be programming projects up to those numbers. Fiscal 2026, we're expecting $10,904,432. So those are the numbers that we'll use going forward when we're developing scenarios. One thing to note is you probably notice in fiscal years 25 and 26, we'll be expecting less money in those years as in prior years. That's due to currently there's federal GANS payments which the state's obligated to pay. GANS is grant anticipation notes. Basically, we're borrowing money against future anticipated funds from the federal government. And in this case, it's for the Accelerated Bridge Program, which has been going on for about a decade or so. That's a program that we use to fund bridge projects statewide, and currently there's a backlog of structurally deficient bridges, which we're trying to mitigate some concerns about the statewide numbers of those bridges going up. So although you see fiscal years 25 and 26 slightly less allocated to our target funds, technically currently they're being spent on bridge projects statewide, including in our region. So that's the reason for that difference there. The next handout we have is the transportation evaluation criteria, which we use. This is made available just for your reference. I won't go through in detail, but basically we score every project based on all these criteria. There's a number of different categories. We look at condition, which would include pavement condition, also average daily traffic, stuff like that. We have a mobility section we look at, any known congestion issues, etc. We also look at safety, which has to do mostly with crash statistics and what effect the project will have on the safety of the facility. Community effects and support, whether it benefits certain populations, whether it has support from certain forms of government. Also, as of note, question 16 here is there active participation from the community in the MPO, MRPC, and JTC. So we look at that as well, and we award projects points based on that as well. Land use and economic development, we look at the effects on those factors, and finally the positive or negative effects on the environment we look at. So the next handout here is basically the world of projects we're looking at for the target section. And as you can see, the TEC scoring for each project is included here. On the left column, you can see where each project is listed on the current tip, the 21 to 25 tip. Those projects that are left blank here haven't been assigned a year yet. They're at various stages of development. Ideally, we'll be looking at assigning these a year in an upcoming tip, and hopefully more than a few for this new update that we're undergoing right now. We have a Mass DOT project ID listed. You can see the community column and a project description column. After that, the next several columns are from our TEC scoring, and we end up with a total TEC score in the third to right column. Also, we have listed a design status for each project and a cost estimate. So this particular list is, again, just sort of all the projects that we're looking at. It's prioritized and listed in order from highest TEC score to lowest. At the bottom here, you see the grayed out project Clinton, reconstruction of Sterling Street, Route 62 from Willow Street, Lawrence Street to Main Street. This is a new project this year. We haven't scored yet. Actually, the design consultant is going to be presenting to the MPO next week. And once we have some more information, we'll be able to score this project and add it to the list. As I mentioned yesterday, we met with DOT and discussed a number of these projects. And as with every year, there's certain changes in design and changes in cost and different elements that change that we will have to likely change around some of the current list when we update it. Some things to keep in mind going forward. When we present some scenarios next month to the group for discussion, there'll likely be some minor and major changes. We discussed yesterday the fact that this first project on the list, Leominster, resurfacing and related work on Route 12 may warrant some changes. There's a number of design elements that are changing. It's a fairly complicated project. There's a lot to it. As you can see, it's expensive. It's a highly rated project. There's a lot of elements to it. Currently, we have it listed constructed over 3 years, what we call advanced constructed, from 2023 to 2025. There may be a need to move this project back a year. Nothing set in stone. This is the type of thing we have to figure out. It'll depend on really when we can expect it to be ready to be advertised, and that's really what we're trying to gauge. So that could be a discussion in one of the scenarios. Another project that is of note is Lancaster intersection improvements on 117 and 70. Currently, that's in 2022. Much like Leominster project, there's a number of design elements that still need some work. So we may be looking at moving that project back a year. 2022 being the first year of this tip that we're updating. So it's really important to have the first year or two of projects we need to have some idea that they'll be ready to go to bid these years. We wouldn't want to sign a project a year, the first year of the TIP, and have it not ready and ultimately not going out to bid. And what could happen is we could lose the funding in our region. So really, one of the most important things is design status. Obviously, the cost estimates are important as well. The TIP is a fiscally constrained document, meaning that these numbers that you see in the target comparison handout, we cannot allocate funds over this. So it's fiscally constrained. We're going to have to do some work to make sure we stay under those numbers. Otherwise, it won't be accepted. So as I said, design status and project cost are very important. Obviously, we look at valuation criteria as well, but all three certainly come into play. That's really all I have for an update this month. As I said before, next month we'll have some scenarios which we look at, different listings for the next 5 years. We'll have a discussion with the GTC and also the MPO, and that'll bring us into April. And we hope to have sort of like a final draft TIP document, which will list all these projects which we've discussed today, along with the transit projects, which we'll discuss at a later date. And we'll also list the statewide prioritized projects in that, as well as a bunch of analysis that goes into the document. And we'll make that available to the group in April. And hopefully in April, the MPO will feel okay with releasing it for a 21-day public comment, which brings us to May. And after discussing any comments that we receive on the document, and we'll incorporate those comments within the final version. Hopefully we'll have an endorsed 2022 through 26 TIP in May. So that's where we stand now. We're on schedule. If there's any questions, please feel free to reach out to myself or Brad. We're at the stage now where we are always welcome to have projects presentations at these meetings. Like I said, Clinton will be presenting their project at the MPO next week. So if there's any additional information, or if you wish to review a TEC score of a project, please reach out and we can work with you on that as well.
One thing I'd like to point out, in addition to all this, as Brian talked about, Brian, can you put up the TEC ranking again? The last column with the estimated cost, that's all the estimated cost right now. When we develop the TIP scenarios, we have to include a year of expenditure or an inflation factor on the project costs. So for the 2022 projects, it'll be the cost estimates we have right now. For projects in 2023, we have to inflate that cost by 4%. In 2024, it's 8%. 2025, it is 12%. And the last year of the TIP, 2026, it'll be a 16% increase in the cost. So when you factor those in and the projects move from year to year, the target numbers we do have get a lot more restrictive, and it becomes sometimes a little bit more difficult to try and fit projects in. So just to let you know, that'll be part of the overall factoring process for the funding scenarios that Brian will be working on coming up.
Right. Also, to keep in mind, I mentioned a few of the projects that we may be looking to move back due to design complications and different issues with the project. There were a number of projects that also increased in cost over the last year. So in our previous listing, we had, for example, I believe the Ashburnham Route 101 project listed in 2025, listed at around $5 million. Well, the current cost for that project is about just north of $7 million. So that's another issue that we'll have to sort of deal with as we move forward and put together our scenarios for next month. So there are a bunch of moving parts. Try to walk everyone through everything and make sure there's an understanding of why things may move around. We'll also be looking at possibly moving projects up. Ideally, that's what, all these projects which haven't been assigned a year will eventually get funded. So looking forward to doing that as well.
And as a community, what you can do on your end, besides reaching out to us to talk to us about your project and TEC scoring, is to work with your design consultant and make sure that they're staying on top of the design. They're contacting Mass DOT, the district offices. They're getting the design submittals in, responding to the comments they get from Mass DOT. That they keep the process moving forward too, and that as a community, you work to push them a little bit harder, maybe to get these design moved forward, because the closer you get to 100%, the easier it is to start working projects into one of the up years of the tip.
Very good. It's a nice brief, Brian. Thank you. Any other questions or comments about the tip? Okay, move along to the Unified Planning Work Program for 2022.
That's mine. So we are wrapping up with our community requests for UPWP projects for next year. So to date, we have received a number of requests. So I'll just go down the list. We have a request from Sterling, and you can see it on the screen, perfect. So they requested 3 things. Pavement management system, assistance with getting the Route 140 and 62 intersection on the tip, as well as some community trail planning. So for Sterling, the number 2, assisting with getting something on the tip, is just something that we regularly do. We do assist our communities with trying to help their projects move forward on the tip. So that's something that we can definitely reach out to them and help with, regardless of it being listed separately on the UPWP. And I'll get into the other 2 items for Sterling in a little bit. For Winchendon, they're also requesting some trail planning. You're seeing a little bit of a pattern here. And Hubbardston, they are looking for an intersection study for both ends of High Street, as well as a street listing map of sorts. And we did speak to Hubbardston, and it sounds like they're going to prioritize the intersection study at High Street. We have yet to receive an official letter from the Board of Selectmen from them, but we do have them on our list, just waiting on that letter. For Ashburnham, they're looking at a Route 12 corridor analysis. Townsend is looking to continue a walkability study to incorporate the northern part of town on Route 31, where we're actually doing their walkability study currently. But they chose to prioritize the area along 119 first. They did want to add the Route 31 component for a potential next project. Leominster is looking at the intersection at Mechanic Street and Commercial Road. And from what we can understand, they're looking more for a pedestrian focus on how people are walking around that intersection. I guess that since the Cumberland Farms and the Fidelity Bank have come in, there have been more people walking in that general area, and they just want to study the safety of that intersection. There's also another potential project that might come in. It's for Air Harvard and Devons. They are looking to do some trail planning assistance as well. They just received district local technical assistance from us to do some assistance with getting a bike lane or a bike trail of sorts on the ground to connect the 3 communities and then extend east into the Littleton and that Boxborough area. It's actually quite a multi-community project, and just those 3 communities are in the Montachusett region. The other communities are in the MAPC region. So we are working with MAPC to try to come up with some assistance to those communities and getting that project moving forward. So this would be a potential continuation of the DLTA funding that they just received. So what we have discussed as a department internally was the thought of potentially creating a trail planning task that would be over like encompassing all communities. It would just be providing assistance with a lot of trail planning because many communities are requesting help with that these days, especially with COVID. A lot of people are using trails, and the complete streets is getting more popular. So putting in sidewalks and bike lanes has become much more of a thing these days. So I know that communities are trying to figure out how to get funding and planning and technical assistance and getting a lot of these projects moving. So because we have assisted with the Montachusett Regional Trails Coalition, that's another component of trail planning that we've been already doing under our general 3C task, which is just technical assistance overall, that maybe we would create a trail planning task that would help some of these communities that are interested in our services, where we could provide that assistance at an actual budgeted line item. I think that would be a little bit easier to keep track of as well. So that's just a thought that we had. And then also maybe beefing up some of our pavement management or data collection to encompass some of the other things like the Sterling Pavement Management System. We have to still get in touch with them to see exactly what they're looking for this type of program. It can be quite costly if it's a full-blown pavement management system that might not be covered under the UPWP at this time, or it could be some kind of assistance where they're going to do the bulk of the work and we would just provide help to them. That we have not figured out quite yet, but we have been reaching out to Sterling to see what their intent for that project is. We also want to consider the equity analysis component to creating projects on the TIP, on the UPWP. So I did a little research and to see which communities we've worked with over the past, I just picked 3 years. And we've worked with all of the communities except for Ashburnham in the last 3 years, with the exception of Harvard and Devens. But we've worked with AIR. So those 3 communities I lumped together, and we have worked with AIR. So that component's a little difficult to prioritize these projects, but I just wanted to let everyone know that we have been working with some of these communities in the past, some more so than others. So that's just something to consider when we start trying to prioritize which projects go in the UPWP this year. Another component is if you scroll down a little bit, Brian, I believe, I'm not sure who is sharing. You can see, maybe you can see that our planning allocation funding is going to be decreased from this current year of about $22,500. So it's also something we need to make sure we budget for in all of our tasks. We are going to be missing out on somewhat of a pretty decent chunk of money. So what we're looking for from the JTC is, are there any particular projects that you think we should prioritize for the UPWP? Is there any community that you feel might not be getting a lot of services from us and maybe we should prioritize them, such as Ashburnham? What is your take on this? We would love to hear from you. But you can always reach out to us after as well. So we hope to get all of our official letters in. I know Townsend and Leominster letters, I believe, are in the works. They have reached out to us within the last week or so. But Hubbardston, I haven't heard from in a couple weeks, so we'll have to reach out to them just to make sure that this is a project that they're still looking to have, and then they can submit their official letter, and we can consider that still.
Sherry, I don't know if you've seen, I did get a official request in from Winchendon this afternoon, and I think I forwarded it to you. So
yeah, I have Winchendon, Sterling, Ashburnham. I believe that's it. And the other 3 communities I think are in the works from my current knowledge. So does anyone have any comments on what we should prioritize or where we should prioritize?
This is Dick Mackey and Sterling. I'd like to suggest that Ashburnham be put up near the top of the list because they haven't received a lot of support, at least in the last 3 years.
Makes sense.
okay, that's good. Excuse me a second.
You feel like you have enough projects to fill up your bucket for the year, or are you looking for more projects?
Oh yeah, actually we typically do like 4 or 5 depending on the type of project each year. Although because of our budget decrease, I'm not sure what we'll be able to squeeze in. It depends on how big these projects come out cost-wise. I know we can merge a couple of them together. Like sometimes we'll merge like an intersection analysis with another community and make it a multi-community task. We've done that with walkability this year. We merged Sterling and Townsend together. So that's something that we could also do, but it would make the task more costly.
But if there are communities that still have some ideas, feel free to send them to us. If we can't incorporate something this year into what we're looking at doing, it's certainly something we'll keep on our board for next year in the development of next year's UPWP. So feel free to send us any suggestions or ideas to either Sherry or myself, and we will look them over and let people know.
So what we hope to do for the March meeting is to come up with some general write-ups for a couple of these tasks. So any information that you might have, additional information or additional comments, please get them to us as soon as you can so that we can actually create these write-ups. And then once we establish which communities we're working with and which projects we're going to be working on or hope to work on, we will reach out to the communities to try to work towards more of a final write-up to make sure that we understand their project correctly and that they understand what we are planning to do for them. So we hope to have a handful of those to present at our March meeting.
And one other thing to consider as part of our UPWP process is we get guidance from Mass DOT and Federal Highway and FTA. So we'll be looking over their guidance requirements for this coming work program and seeing how we need to work those requests or those points into the UPWP. And they may involve some of these tasks. We may be able to address some of these tasks with the guidance from the state and the feds. So there'll be a whole tying together of all kinds of different requests and guidance and requirements from all different sources.
Any more questions or comments on that?
John, can I ask Sherry a question? What part does the actual cost of the program play in making the ultimate decisions as to which ones go forward?
I don't know that makes, well, I mean, if it's too large of a project, it probably won't be considered just because it would have to be under a potential, like maybe an additional funding source, like a contract with the community or another type of grant funding. But I think we generally try to go figure out which projects and communities we would like to work with, like prioritize those first before we come up with the cost. But again, that's where like the smaller cost projects can be merged together, where we can get kind of more bang for our buck, if you will, for the communities. So
once we have discussions with the communities, to really identify their request, that gives us an idea of how to establish budgets. And so when we get to that point, then we'll start looking at, is this a project really fairly large and would require a lot more funding through the work program? And if so, what does that mean to the other projects? So some of them, are, I don't want to say low cost, but they're not as in-depth staff-wise or analysis-wise. So we can, develop a budget for that and see how it goes at that point. As part of the UPWP, we have our regular tasks, which are developing the TIP, developing the Unified Planning Work Program, meetings and things we call supportive 3C, meeting with different communities and answering questions, technical assistance questions. We have our data collection program, which is mostly traffic counts, but now we're expanding to include sidewalk inventories, trail counts, and those kind of things. So as those get a little larger too, their budgets increase. And so we have to play a juggling game with the budget. And the fact that our total budget has gone down by about 22,000 makes it a little bit more difficult. But like we say, once we ID the actual requests from the communities, then we can establish their budgets and see how it all fits together. Our goal is not to turn any community down, but we want to make sure we can adequately address what they want too. So sometimes it may be just a juggling of a year or two if it's a large project.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any more questions? Thanks, Sherry. With the contract status report.
George, you have anything?
Not much because the air project, it is on hold because the winter season. Hopefully by March, April, we start the project. The only thing left in the project is just the restroom should be completed by June or July, and that project will be completed. The other thing we are working on is the Shirley commuter parking lot. We're trying to improve that parking lot because really they don't have enough parking. I know now there is nobody using the system. It's only 10% or it's only 10% of the full ridership of the MBTA, and nobody parking in our mart garages, all empty from Wachusett all the way to Air, all empty. The other thing we have is we are working on the last touches of the new service MART going to implement is the Worcester commuter shuttle. That shuttle will start from Fitchburg, Leominster to Clinton, and from Clinton go to Worcester. We'll have a stop in Worcester at Porter and Chester Institute at Mountain Street. Then from there, we'll go to the court, and from the court to the Union Station and back to Fitchburg. And this service is beside the Worcester shuttle. The one goes to the hospitals in Worcester area. And that's what I have so far. Thank you. Any question?
Thanks, George.
Oh, thank you.
Brad, do you have something for 3C?
Yep, a couple of items. As Brian mentioned when we was talking about the TIP, staff attended a joint Massachusetts Regional Planning Agency group called MARPA and MassDOT, and that meeting was on January 26th. We received a lot of information regarding the TIPs and the UPWPs, but also at that meeting, we heard from the new acting secretary and CEO of Mass Department of Transportation, Stephanie Pollock, who you may remember as the CEO and secretary, resigned that prior Monday to take a position in Washington. So Governor Baker named Jamie Tesler as the acting head of Mass DOT. And he comes over from the Mass Registry of Motor Vehicles. So he'll be the head of the Mass DOT for the time being. We also met last month with the Fitchburg City officials to discuss the scope of the Route 12 corridor study that we are undertaking in this program year. We talked about issues along the corridor and what the city's desires were and what their main concerns were. And as a result of that, we've sort of dropped down the scope or the size of the study area of the entire length of Route 12. It's been reduced. We're going to mainly focus on Route 12 from the Bemis Road, Winoosknock Road intersection to the Water Street Bridge. So we'll be looking at, traffic flow, congestion, accidents, curb cuts, all those kind of things on that particular stretch of road. That's, I believe, just over a mile of a road, mile and a half, almost a mile and a half of Route 12. Also, as part of our upcoming program, we're going to be looking for a couple of new traffic interns to assist with the traffic count program over the next few months. Typically, we hire 2 interns, either college or high school graduates or so, to work for us from about April, May to the end of October. We'll have about 120 odd traffic counts already slated for this coming year. Last year's count program, you may remember, is drastically reduced because of COVID-19. We didn't really get any traffic counts done until late in the year at the request of Mass DOT because, as you saw, a lot of the traffic patterns were just off kilter from previous years. One other item is we were invited by the city of Fitchburg to be part of a steering committee for a project to examine the John Fitch Highway corridor between Summer Street and Lunenburg Street. And I titled this project John Fitch Highway, a Climate Resilient Corridor. It's being funded through the Commonwealth's Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Grant Program. And the goal is to begin a redesign of the John Fitch Highway corridor to mitigate flooding, reduce urban heat island impacts, and provide equitable mobility and access options in this environmental justice neighborhood. The first meeting is actually later today, so I will be on the steering committee. Sherry is going to be my backup, and we'll probably be providing some feedback to you as we go along as to how this project is moving forward. And the last item I have is a repeat handout for your information. This is a reminder about the Division of Ecological Restoration, from the Mass Department of Fish and Game. It's a culvert replacement municipal assistance grant program. They're seeking proposals from Mass municipalities interested in replacing an undersized, perched or degraded culvert located in an area of high ecological value. The purpose of this funding is to encourage municipalities to replace culverts with better designed crossings that meet improved structural and environmental design standards and climate resiliency criteria. So there's a pre-request for responses period. It's began on January 12th and it goes till February 18th. And that provides a preview of the whole process. There are links to this on the handout that's available. And there's also an announcement, a news announcement on our website on the front page, which has the same information and has these active links that could take you to the program to get some further information. So we just want to make that aware to the towns that this is a possible program they might want to take advantage of. And that is basically it that I have for Mass DOT 3C.
Okay, any questions about that? Next administrative matters, Brad?
The next MJTC meeting is March 10th at 2:30. So 1 month from today. Same date, same time.
All right. Any closing comments? Guess not. Thanks everybody for tuning in, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you all very much.
Thanks, Brad. Good meeting.
Thank you.
Brian, nice job.